Well, summer's now well underway, and I'm going to be honest, I need a break from you guys. You've been under my feet all year. Not really, I love you all very dearly. So I'm sending you all to Camp Arawak to be precise. Yes, this month I thought there'd be no better way to see the season out, and indeed the rest of the summer, by taking a look at some of the often overlooked and definitely derided Sleepaway Camp movies. This is a really weird franchise that you could maybe just about call consistent if you were being nice. Today, however, we start at the very beginning, as all good stories should, with the film that started it all, 1983's Sleepaway Camp, also known in the UK and some parts of Europe as Nightmare Vacation. It's a slasher horror that landed on the scene well into the slasher genre's golden age of production. Around this time, the Friday the 13th series was trying desperately to bring 3D back to the scene, Halloween had just about tied up Michael Myers and was about to get weird, and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were just about on the horizon. Aping the success of those more mainstream features would be films like The House on Sorority Row and The Prowler, which had also sprung out of the lower budgeted film studios. And Sleepaway Camp was part of this middle ground attempt to capitalise on the slasher genre. The film follows Felissa Rose as Angela Baker, a quiet and somewhat introverted young girl who's constantly backed up by her cousin Ricky. In the opening of the film, her and her family are out sailing on a local lake when a freak boating accident accidentally kills off most of them in a way so gory that they couldn't even be bothered to film it for this film. Angela's made to live with her aunt, who's an extremely eccentric doctor who's saddened but also delighted at Angela's arrival, as she always wanted a daughter of her own. We then skip forward about 5 to 10 years, and Angela is now a teenager, 13-ish, I think. And her and her cousin Ricky are preparing to spend the rest of the summer at Camp Arawak, a place that promises joy and joyness in all its typical summer camp flavours. However, things don't get off to a good start when Angela's shy and quiet nature annoys Judy, the bitchy jailbait of the movie, and Meg, one of the counsellors who believes that Angela needs to engage with camp activities rather than just sitting and silently eyeballing down anyone and everyone who talks to her. This pressure's only intensified when a paedophilic chef tries to molest Angela and later winds up severely and life-changingly injured. The head of the camp, who was seemingly aware of the diddler's intentions, tries to hush up all of the murders. But as more bodies begin to appear, the head of the camp slowly begins to lose his mind, and both Ricky and Angela are put on the chopping blocks as prime suspects. Will the killer be found in time to stop any further murders? And just why is Angela so quiet? Could she be the killer? All this and more will be answered over the next 90-ish minutes, and I'm certain that you will not forget this film in a hurry. 80s slasher movies have often been mired in a bit of a sludge from a quality control perspective historically. For every genuinely good slasher film out there, there's about 10 that are face-meltingly awful or deeply underwhelming. And that can be a real problem when it comes to finding movies in this genre that are actually pretty good, because it often means wading through a lot of truly awful films to get there. Sleepaway Camp is, to me, one of the best non-mainstream slashers to be released. Full stop. I find it entertaining, genuinely funny in places, grisly, and it has enough twists and turns to keep me on board from start to finish. Script-wise, while it's not the tightest film in the world, it could almost certainly stand to lose about 10 to 15 minutes with no issues at all. What it does do with the time it has is really quite impressive, especially given that the working cast for this script is a majority kid and teen cast, and given that the dialogue is all still relatively naturalistic. Kids swear in this film, they talk about sex, they play pranks on each other, they, well, do what actual kids and teenagers do in real life. There are a couple of rather corny dialogue exchanges here and there which haven't dated brilliantly, and I'll also say the standard 3-act structure does get a little warped to accommodate some of the plot twists this film puts out there, but that's fine. This is a film that really starts to challenge what the genre is in a filmmaking sense. Whereas previously it would be the case that the first act would set up the killer, the main characters, then the second act would kill a few of them and reveal the killer before the third act ends in an all-out slaughtergeddon, this film almost lends some elements from the thriller genre to help keep it light on its feet and punchy throughout. You don't find out who the killer actually is until the last 5 minutes of the film. But if you pay attention closely enough while watching this for the first time, you'll actually be able to figure out who the killer is well before they call it themselves. Well, assuming you haven't been spoiled in advance. Before this movie had sequels, I can imagine it must have been a quite shocking and unexpected reveal. The script keeps its cards very close to its chest, it plays things out nice and smoothly, it plays around with what would have been existing narrative tropes. It's a damn fine script. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best in the world, but it is a damn fine one, especially given the writer and director's background. This film was written and directed by Robert Hiltzik, and man, this guy is bordering on having the title of one shot by a hair's breadth. So, he has 2 directing credits. This was his first attempt at a feature, and he wouldn't direct another feature for a further 25 years until the 2008 release of Sleepaway Camp's other sequel, Return to Sleepaway Camp. That's everything he's ever directed. He hasn't done a thing before or since. On writing duties, again, this and Return to Sleepaway Camp are his only 2 credits. I mean, he has based on credits for all of the Sleepaway Camp movies that came in between, but that's largely just for creating the universe those films inhabited. He didn't actually have any involvement in writing those scripts, and he wasn't involved in those movies at all in any way, shape or form. I find the idea that this was not only his first feature, but also the only film he would be directly involved in filming for at least 25 years quite astounding, as the direction and cine here is perfectly adequate, if not bordering on the genuinely impressive at times. The direction of the cast is bizarre to say the least. For the most part, it's pretty standard, but then there are just some characters that completely go off the beaten path and give performances here that could have only been instructed and encouraged by a director specifically. Ricky, for example, throughout is a sweary, fighty, angry child, and that rage shown on screen could have only been encouraged from some keen directorship, as child actors wouldn't really know where to channel that energy from. Equally, both the paedophile chef and Angela's aunt give powerfully ingraining eccentric performances. I'm not joking when I say that the way they're shot and the performances they give here will literally stay with you for the rest of your life. They're that tonally out of shape to the rest of the picture, it's so jarring. Equally, it must be said that the cine is also seriously impressive, especially, and I cannot stress this enough, for a first-timer. There's a good range of shot types that help to flesh out the feelings that are being portrayed through the script's narrative. But this isn't a solidly serious film, this has its tongue firmly in its cheek at times. And there are a lot of visual gags and macabre set pieces that just scream gallow humours at times. And most critically to holding all of this together, they use the cine just right for the most part in masking the more ropier effects with darkness or coverage. This helps keep things nice and atmospheric when they need to be. They don't bombard the viewer with images and give them all the answers in that way. They take their time to craft just about the right level of shots and shot types to make the audience think about what they're seeing without overtaxing them. The performances too are good and sturdy. As mentioned, Angela's aunt, played by Desiree Gould, is just a hurricane for her 1 or 2 scenes. Seriously, the woman completely and totally makes this movie with the performance she gives. It's not so much chewing the scenery, more gorging on it, and it sets the tone and vibe of the film more or less clean out of the gate. It's eccentric and manic and wonderful in every single way. Felissa Rose is also astounding in this as Angela. She has a piercing glare that I've only ever seen my cat match in terms of intenseness. And she absolutely nails the shy, quiet, awkward type down pat. For a 13-year-old at the time of filming, she's absolutely astounding throughout, and is really totally watchable in a deeply and discomforting way. Seriously, that soulless stare will genuinely haunt you. The supporting cast are all good and solid and seem to be having a good time making this. Mike Kellin as Mel, the head camp counsellor, gives a greasy performance that made me want to give my bath a shower. This would unfortunately be his last on-screen appearance before his untimely death, but god damn it, he's easily one of the most memorable parts of this picture. Finally, Karen Fields as Judy has got to be one of the best on-screen bitches I've ever seen. She's easily the most punchable character I've ever watched in a movie, and I mean that in the best possible way. Not because she's annoying, you understand, but rather she gives such an astoundingly solid performance as the girl who's malicious just because she enjoys the carnage and attention that comes with it, that I loved it and I just wanted to slap her in equal measures. I think she's probably one of my favourite baddie characters of all time, just because she throws herself so entirely into the role that I don't think I could see her playing any other kind of character without immediately being drawn back to this. Karen would in fact reprise the role of Judy for a short film of the same name, and while it's still on my to-watch list, I can say that if she's able to maintain the character from the first film in being as truly nasty as she is in it, I think I'm in for a treat. Sadly, this was her only feature outing. Finally, the soundtrack, which is brilliantly overwhelming. You see, they've balanced the music to be heavy in the mix. It's largely all orchestral pieces with maybe the odd stock, rocky, poppy number thrown in for diegetic scenes. But they've balanced those booming orchestral tracks so prominently in the mix that it can be completely intrusive and very oppressive to the audience. In older releases of this film, it would even blot out the dialogue, it was that high in the mix. When I think about the film, I think about the string accompaniments to some of the scenes and how powerfully they're wielded in certain moments. This is a movie where its soundtrack really does help to make the feature. I can't imagine this movie sounding any different than it currently does. But if it was rescored, it'd be significantly poorer for it. While it isn't one to rush out and own in and of itself, it's definitely one of the more memorable soundtracks that I can recall. Sleepaway Camp was released in the UK as Nightmare Vacation in early 1984, and as such it was a pre-cert VHS release. It was arguably one of the last pre-certs to be released in the country before the Video Recordings Act made it mandatory for all films to carry a certificate. The film was cut on its initial release by 57 seconds to truncate some of the death scenes to make them more suitable for British audiences, and also to remove the odd blink-and-you'll-miss-it shot of border underage man-ass. This cut version was, for the longest period of time, the most readily accessible version of the movie available. An uncut version would later be released at some point in the early 2010s, but only in the US. For the UK, however, well, we didn't get off quite as lucky. There was a trilogy box set released in 2004 by Anchor Bay Entertainment, which pretty much just dubbed the master copies of the cut pre-certs and post-certs of the three films onto DVD with a couple of special features. Nothing exciting, mind, just trailers and the likes. This now sells for an extortionate amount online, so it's unlikely you'll ever be able to get your hands on a copy, and since then the film has been caught in several legal and distribution issues between the film's director and the BBFC, which means that outside of that box set, which is now terrifically out of print, the UK's never seen a standalone release of this movie on either DVD or Blu-ray. I had to import my version of this film from Spain. It's a Blu-ray R. But for my money, the quality's solid, it's clearly 1080p and retains a high level of detail with no artifacting. Frankly, it's a lovely transfer, and the price was definitely right in my opinion. It was a much wanted film on my list, and I feel this boot was definitely worth my time. Hell, if the choice is not to own the film, or to own it with no extras on Blu-ray R, I'll take the latter any day. As for the US, Scream Factory have put out a gorgeous special edition set of this movie, packed with extras. It's beautiful. I really hope that someday one of the many UK distributors out there will eventually manage to get their hands on the UK rights to this package, as it's probably the most comprehensive release this movie will ever get. On its own as a one-shot, Sleepaway Camp is a fantastic example of the campsite slasher movie that most people associate with the Friday the 13th franchise. A quirky and gory feature, it's shot well, directed well, the music is overwhelming, the cast are all colourful and deeply interesting, and the script's just a delight. Hell, apart from a couple of pacing issues, I really genuinely can't fault this one. It's a classic in my eyes. And if you only see one of these movies, make sure it's this one. It'll blow your socks off. As for the sequels, well, that's a completely different kettle of fish.